Hello everyone, I'm Barbara D'Ambrosia, and in this video we'll explore the meaning of even and odd numbers. We'll start with a definition of even and odd. First, we need to understand that the words even and odd describe only integers, that is, positive and negative whole numbers and zero. Fractions and decimal numbers are neither even nor odd. So when I use the word number in this video, I always mean integer. An even number is divisible by 2. An odd number is not divisible by 2. At the end of the video, I'll say a few words about negative numbers and zero. For now, though, we'll focus on positive numbers, which we can represent as collections of objects. Conceptually, a number is divisible by 2 if that number of objects can be separated into two groups of equal size, with no objects left over and without splitting any object into several parts. For example, let's determine whether the number of stars on the screen is divisible by 2 without counting the stars. We arrange the stars into two groups, each of which has the same number of stars. Since there are no stars left over, the total number of stars is divisible by 2. Thus, the total number of stars is even. If we try to move these hearts into two equal groups, we have one left over. So the total number of hearts is not divisible by 2. Thus, the total number of hearts is odd. Here's another way to determine whether a number is divisible by 2. A number is divisible by 2 if that number of objects can be separated into groups of size 2 with no objects left over. For example, let's determine whether the number of blocks is divisible by 2. We put the blocks into groups of size 2. That is, we pair them up. Since there is one block left over, the total number of blocks is not divisible by 2. So the total number of blocks is odd. Now let's determine whether the number of hexagons is divisible by 2. There are no hexagons left over when we form groups of size 2, so the total number of hexagons is divisible by 2. Thus, the total number of hexagons is even. We can also check for divisibility by 2 by using multiplication and division. Since 42 equals 2 times 21, we know that we can separate 42 items into two groups of size 21. Similarly, since 42 equals 21 times 2, we know that we can separate 42 objects into 21 groups of size 2. Either way, we see that 42 is divisible by 2 and thus is even. On the other hand, when we divide 125 by 2, we get a remainder of 1. 125 equals 62 times 2 plus 1. So we can separate 125 items into 62 groups of size 2 with one object left over. Similarly, since 125 equals 2 times 62 plus 1, we can separate 125 objects into two groups of size 62 with one leftover object. Either way, 125 is not divisible by 2, and so 125 is odd. We can apply the same equal groups reasoning to determine whether 0 is even or odd. There are 0 apples on this slide. When we separate those 0 apples into two groups of equal size, each group has 0 apples. I realize that this might seem strange. All you really need to understand is that this slide shows no apples. Because there are no apples left over when we separate the 0 apples into 2 equal groups, 0 is even. It's hard to describe a negative number of physical objects, so we'll rely on multiplication and division to determine whether a negative number is even or odd. For example, negative 34 equals 2 times negative 17. So negative 34 is divisible by 2 and thus is even. But negative 27 equals 2 times negative 14 plus 1. That remainder of 1 tells us that negative 27 is not divisible by 2 and thus is odd. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this video helpful, I invite you to check out the other math videos on my YouTube channel.